The Arabian Racehorse Podcast with Debbie Burt and Gary Capel.
Welcome to another edition of the Arabian Racing Podcast. This week, we're going to be reviewing the two races we've just had, the Bailey's Horse Feeds Condition Stakes and the Equine Medi Record Handicap Stakes. And then we'll be looking forward to the last race of our season, which will be the Shadwell Arabian Stallions Handicap Stakes, a 0 to 95 over just short of a mile and 2 furlongs. So Gary, if we return to Chelmsford, which is where we had the Bailey's Horse Feeds Condition Stakes, that was over 7 furlongs, and that was a very pleasing performance, I thought, by Abir Athbar.
Yeah, I suppose in some ways it probably counts as a career best for her, I think. We were slightly concerned, or there was a slight concern about her stepping back down, and should potentially, anyway, with there being a small field, it could become quite tactical. But I think it was a very clever ride from Joey Haynes, and he was quite positive on her. He was always sort of fairly prominent, led heading out of the back straight. And at Chelmsford, certainly we see that with the thoroughbred races. It's certainly no bad thing to be out in front. It can often be difficult to make up ground. And she saw it out very comfortably, I thought, despite maybe just keeping a bit for herself in the closing stage. I think, although she's won by 2 1/4 lengths, I think she's probably valued for a little bit more than the official winning margin. And whether she'll stay in training next year, I'm not sure. But what the plans will be for her. But it's been a profitable season. Another step forward has been taken throughout the course of the year, and I'm sure Connections will be thrilled with her.
Absolutely. Speaking to Pete after the race, I think we're pretty certain she'll stay in training again next year. And as he said to us when I spoke to him for our interview last time, he did point out that the Dam, of course, had won the Clarendon Stakes over 5 furlongs. So, although we were both concerned about the drop back in trip, certainly it shows, apart from anything else, that, confirms the class of her performance at Goodwood. Running to 5th behind Ebraz, which is no poor performance in itself, particularly when all of those horses were race fit and all our UK horses were having their first runs of the season. Bit disappointing, I thought, from Al Aziza. I thought she would have possibly done a little bit better than that when she finished 4th, but take nothing away from the winner. As you said, certainly a bit, there's certainly more value there, I think, in her running again next year.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned the down one, the 5 furlong, which just wonder long term, should we have a Dubai International Arabian Race Day next year, whether they might consider something like this a Zabeel for her, because the way that she travelled through that race, the quicker they went out in front, it'll probably suit her. I'm sure, that rating now might just take her out of the handicap bracket. So we'll see. Or they may obviously just go back to Goodwood. Obviously, those two races usually fall quite close together, don't they? In behind, Al Aziza probably was a little bit disappointing. Just looked a little bit awkward, I thought, under pressure perhaps as well. And she's only 5. There could well be a bit more improvement to come from her. Solid in a front from Tajari. We know where we are with him. He sort of sets the benchmark for the rest of the race to be rated around, if you like. And 2 found that was a pleasing run into open company, having won a maiden on just the only previous start, and was beaten 4 lengths in the end. But this horse is only a 4-year-old. It was the second start for the horse, and I'm sure there'll be more to come from that horse next campaign.
Absolutely, Gary. And we now move on to our more recent race, the Equine Medi Record 0 to 70 Handicap Stakes. That was run at Wolverhampton on the 21st of November. Again, there, Peter Hammersley, his string's obviously in very good form at the moment, but a very pleasing performance from what I think is a very likeable young horse in Altabari.
Yeah, very much so. Followed up that recent course win, proved that was certainly no fluke, coming back down in trip here. Again, very confidently ridden by Howard Cheng. And for the level, he looks like a very progressive horse. He put the race to bed in no uncertain terms and was a wide margin winner from Samawat. Better from her, I think. If they can keep her sound next year, I'm sure she'll be winning, because that's 2 good runs back to back. And the same for Zane's Hyperion, who obviously has taken a little while for the penny to drop, but that's 3 good runs now in the space of just over a month. So Antonio Peck seems to get on quite well with this horse, and if that partnership is maintained next year, I would imagine that they'll be able to find a race for him as well. Bin Al Ree did what Bin Al Ree always does, ran on quite well. Good first experience with the Arabians for Patrick Barlow, who seemed to get a decent tune out of Bin Al Ree. Maurid, I suppose, was a little bit disappointing. Maybe same sort of comments for Alwyn Forter as well. But the winner continues to impress with how he's going through his races. Looks very progressive, and I'm sure he'll continue to progress next year.
Absolutely, Gary. And again, similar response to the previous race we've just talked about, in that, you know, Pete's team is in great form. He trained the first 4 home. And again, without Abari, you know, the strength there is in the dam as well, because, of course, ARH Cossack was very successful over a range of trips. I think she won about 8 or 9 races. I mean, he's a first foal, so he is a little bit on the small side. Certainly he does look like there's room for further improvement. You know, and also an interesting first UK winner, which we may have discussed when he won last time, for Tabarak, who of course won the Doncaster race all those years ago. So yeah, I think, you know, he's certainly one horse that I'm be looking forward to seeing run next year.
Yeah, as I say, he went through the race really well, and I haven't seen him up close, but he does look a little bit on the small side, perhaps, but he's still got another winter to grow, perhaps for the next season. And yeah, it's interesting to see that this first foal of ARH Cossack, who I can remember running over 1.5 miles and over numerous staying trips. She was a hardy stayer. It'll be interesting to see if that if she produces any more similar sort of horses, or you should imagine, obviously, hopefully they might have a little bit more scope. But as I say, this horse has clearly inherited at least some of her ability.
Absolutely. And speaking of horses to come, Altabari has a full brother, also by Tabarak, only he's grey like his sire. Bigger, stronger looking individual already. So if he makes it to the track for maybe a run at the end of next year as a 3-year-old, I think he'll certainly be a horse to follow for the future. And now we're going to go to our last race of the season, the Shadwell Arabian Stallions Handicap Stakes. It's a 0 to 95. We're back at Wolverhampton and back again over 1 mile, 1 furlong and half a furlong. And we've got, you could say, a disappointing field of 6, but actually I think, given the conditions of the race and the level of the race, it's pretty much what you would expect, certainly for this time of year, when you know, a lot of horses have been put away now at the end of November.
Yeah, it's been an unusual season in terms of how the races have fallen, and the truncated season that, unfortunately, that we've had to have. I agree, considering the conditions for this race. I think we've only got 6 of them, but they're a good quality 6. You
know, as we say, it looks like it's going to be a competitive race. Obviously, 2 of them, Emirati and Farha, they're making their seasonal reappearance in the UK, but of course they've been very busy abroad. Emirati, good yardstick, you know, I mean, he's always in the frame pretty much on every time, you know, the horse always shows up at the races. It would be nice to think that perhaps he might get his head in front. I mean, his last win was in 2018 at Taunton, ridden by Simon Walker, pretty much over this trip. Farha is, again, another one who hasn't won for a while, but she's run obviously very well abroad. She, interestingly, reunites with Joanna Mason, who was the last person to ride her to victory. And, of course, Jo recently turned professional this week.
Yes, she did. I think she had her first ride at Chelmsford, I think it was, as I suppose it's an apprentice now, isn't it? Well, not really apprentice, but professional, sorry. So, yeah, good luck to her. She's obviously taken the plunge. And, yes, she's reunited with a horse that she clearly gets on well with. And for me, I still think there's a little bit of unfinished business with her. I still think there's potential, particularly off sort of the handicap mark that she's now off of 87. She was last seen over here off 89, so she's got a couple of pounds back. Still would like to think she's capable of progressing into the sort of mid-90s myself, but we'll obviously learn a little bit more tomorrow, as we record this on Sunday. Emirati, we know all about him. He's battle hardened. He too has actually been dropped a bit in the handicap since we last saw him over here, so they don't really sort of come much tougher than this horse, and he'll probably be out there making the running. And we know that he handles the track and is likely to sort of be difficult to try and peg back. Phil's 2, Loulois, obviously it's a handicap debut for her. For this horse, who was third in the obviously in our Derby and ran well in an Elvis event. The opening mark leaves the horse open to a bit of improvement as well, so it has to be respected. And likewise, the Seba companion Anfas, who was a little bit disappointing, perhaps over a trip that might have just stretched her last time out. And coming back down in ship will definitely suit her. We know that she handles the track. As to there's Mazuna, who's won here a couple of times. The form of that horse's victory here earlier on in the season has obviously worked out well. And Satam's got headgear on for the first time. Obviously finished behind Loulois when last seen. Also obviously ran in the Derby. Handicap debut for that horse as well. And again, open to a bit of improvement. But fascinating race tactically. You'd imagine Emirati will try and force the pace. My pin just came down on Far, as I said. Still get the impression that perhaps we haven't quite seen the best of this horse just yet.
Absolutely, and I think also Farha would be my pick. I spoke to Phil Collington yesterday about his 2 particularly, and Loulois certainly going to be, whatever she does tomorrow, she'll be a better horse on grass. She's a big, long striding filly, and I think, somewhere like, we were talking about other races which might suit horses next year. As you say, if there's a Dubai Day, then a race like the Hatter would be ideal for her. The course would play to her strengths, and she's certainly going to be a better horse back on turf, I think. And Anfas, it's going to be her last run. She'll be retired. He didn't have any excuses for her run last time. He said she's training really well at home. You have to say, if you go back over previous form, she should be in with a good shout as much as any of the others there. She's also another one who's dropped a little bit in the handicap since she won last time. So we'll just have to see. And one little word about Mizuna, partly because in my column for the French Purebred Arabian, I've been writing about a trainer out in Poland called Connie Freisel, who's having her first season training out there. And you might remember her. She rode in the Sheikha Fatima series. And she's finished second in the Trainers' Championship in her first season. And most of the horses she's trained have come from the Vesoul stud in France. And Mizuna is from that breeding. And it's been interesting to see how those horses have been performing in Poland against some of the stronger teams, like the Alcalidia bred horses and so on. So Mizuna catches my eye. Again, she's very unexposed. I think she's been a bit difficult to train. And I think I agree with you, Gary. I think Farha will be the one for me tomorrow.
Yeah, you mentioned Mizuna. Obviously, as we said, that form's worked out. I suppose this is a slight step up in grades as well, but we know that the horse handles the surface, and that obviously has to be a little bit of a plus coming into this race, and obviously gets weight all round. Absolutely.
And so this will obviously, as I've said, bring to the conclusion of our rather shortened season. We'll be back to review the season and to look at this race and the season's championships in the next couple of weeks. Thank you very much.